Story of the 32nd Iowa Infantry Volunteers, compiled and published by John Scott, Nevada, Iowa, 1896. To the memory of those who fell in battle and by the wayside in the war for the Union. On the national flag of the 32nd Iowa Infantry, now in the state capitol, the following battles are inscribed: Cape Girardeau, Bayou Meter, Fort DeRussy, Pleasant Hill, Marksville, Yellow Bayou, Lake Chicote, Tupelo, Old Town Creek, Nashville, Brentwood Hills, and Fort Blakely. Itinerary of the regiment. The following record of the movements of the regiment from January 1864 to the time of reaching Montgomery, Alabama, at the close of the war, is made from memoranda kept by Wellington Russell of Company C. The aggregate distance is nearly 7,000 miles. Columbus, Kentucky to Vicksburg, Mississippi by boat, 665 miles. March to Meridian, Mississippi, 200 miles. March to Vicksburg, 200 miles. By boat to Simmsport, Louisiana, 317 miles. March to Fort DeRussy, 33 miles. By boat to Alexandria, 72 miles. March to Cotyle, 27 miles. By boat to Grand Ecore, 95 miles. March to Pleasant Hill and return, 70 miles. Marched via Natchitoches, Alexandria, Simmsport to Morganza Bend, 188 miles. By boat to Vicksburg, 200 miles. By boat to Sunnyside, Arkansas, 130 miles. Marched to Columbia, 20 miles. By boat to Memphis, 235 miles. By railway to Moscow, 40 miles. Marched via LaGrange, Pontiac, Tupelo, and again by LaGrange to Collierville, 200 miles. By railway to Memphis, 25 miles. By railway to Holly Springs, 77 miles. Marched to Memphis via Oxford, 100 miles. By boat via Cairo to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, 440 miles. By railway to Mineral Point, 95 miles. Marched to Merrimack River, 8 miles. By railway to Jefferson Barracks, 9 miles. Marched to Franklin, 47 miles. To Jefferson City, 108 miles. To California, 25 miles. To Lexington, 144 miles. To Harrisonville, 92 miles. To Glasgow, 138 miles. To St. Louis via St. Charles, 173 miles. By boat to Cairo, 200 miles. To Nashville, 215 miles. March to Pulaski, 79 miles. December 31st, 1864, 31 miles. To Clifton, 30 miles. By boat to Eastport, 80 miles. To New Orleans, 1,410 miles. To Dauphin Island, 247 miles. To Danley's Mills, 40 miles. March to Fort Blakely, 24 miles. And to Montgomery, 130 miles. The average distance by route traveled from Montgomery to the homes in Iowa is not much less than 2,000 miles. In addition, the modern estimate of something more than 1,000 miles for the average itinerary prior to 1864, the total is more than 10,000 miles. Last words. Additional facts have come to the knowledge of the compiler too late for their proper place in the body of the history, among which may be noted the death of Cyrus Wyatt, which occurred at Otisville, Iowa, July 2, 1865. Also the death of Peter Seam, which occurred in Florence County, Tennessee, in 1890. Honorable H.O. Pratt, present, address is Mount Vernon, Iowa. Sergeant Ovid Hare lives in Los Angeles, California. Mail directed to the comrades named below and sent to their last known address has been returned as unclaimed. George L. Allen, Alter Andrews, Samuel Andrews, H.S. Barr, G.W. Barnes, Eli Blickensderfer, G.M. Bolton, Moses Blunt, P. Bynum, John J. Bradshaw, John H. Brooks, Isaac A. Butcher, W. F. Clark, A. P. Condit, H. P. Carpenter, W. C. Clausen, E. R. Combs, William Currier, J. S. Cross, I. B. Cummings, L. H. Chafin, John Delvey, Winthrop Dyer, James L. Eakins, Lloyd Eberhart, Luther Ellis, Leander Farlow, James Gamble, H. R. Gilliland, James C. Gordon, J. N. Grondin, James Gibson, Calvin Hall, W. R. W. Hancock, W. S. Hansberry, William C. Hickman, E. L. Hurlbut, Asa Joslin, F. Johnson, J. L. Kerr, James T. Leach, James C. Lauk, J. W. Landers, A. O. Lesh, J. N. W. Mahaffey, S. S. Martin, John C. Maupin, M. V. B. Malsby, J. O. Moriarty, D. J. Miller, David J. Miller, Geo G. Miller, Levi Miller, Alfred M. Henry, Isaac McHenry, Cuban McVeigh, William Nelson, Nels L. Nelson, W. R. A. T. Prescott, George N. Palmer, J. T. Payne, J. B. Patterson, John N. Richardson, B. G. Scott, David Sellers, Ernie Smith, Robert Smith, Andrew Smith, W. N. Sefton, James Sonrenson, B. R. Thomas, S. B. Wells, W. Webster, S. S. Weiland, J. F. Ward, Charles White, R. S. William, J. W. Yost, and John Young. It may be of importance not only to those and all other comrades whose address is not given in the rosters herein, but also to many others, that the present address of every surviving member of the regiment should be known. If those who can supply unknown addresses will send them to the compiler, it will help in the compilation of a more complete roster, which can be printed and sent to all members when giving notice of the date and place of each biannual reunion. In like manner, each comrade should furnish a statement of any charge in this post office address, including street and number in cities in which delivery is made by carriers. The compiler will take pleasure in the keeping and making corrections from time to time of such list of the comrades from which he may be able to furnish information. Great care should be taken to write legibly names of persons and places. Nevada, Iowa, July 12, 1896. Prefatory. Almost from the date of muster out, but especially from and after the first regimental reunion, there has been a growing sentiment in favor of the preparation of the truthful account of the service of the 32nd Regiment Iowa Volunteers. This has increased as time has passed, and the memories of comradeship have drawn closer and closer those with a common history. This thought has been greatly strengthened by the contemplation of wrongs done in the publication of untruthful statements made by parties interested, and especially by a certain flavor that has made its presence felt when the Red River campaign was under discussion. This was in this malodorous series of disastrous blunders that the regiment made its brightest and most enduring fame. Yet such was the character of the operations, and such the inadequate results of the severe trials and heroic efforts of the rank and file of that army, that in public estimation even these trials and efforts have never had due recognition. On the contrary, even those who most honorably participated in desperate conflicts have been compelled to refer to them in words of semi-apology and explanation. During all this period, the blood of gallant comrades cruelly sacrificed has cried from the ground in protest against the silence of those who lived to speak for them, and the living have murmured against the cruel wrong that so-called history has done to the dead and to themselves. This thought culminated at the 37th biannual reunion of the veterans who assembled at Fort Dodge in 1893. It was then and there agreed that further postponement of the story of the regiment, in proper form, would be less than a crime, and measures were taken authorizing such publication. A committee was appointed and given full authority to proceed with the history and to call for such records and assistance as may be required. There had previously been spasmodic efforts in this direction, which at least served to keep up the interest in the subject. But meantime many precious years were lost, and with them many of the witnesses who alone could testify to important and most interesting facts. But there have been published in newspapers from time to time the contributions of Sergeant J. M. Boyd, the adventures of I. A. Packard and Sergeant Jewett in their escape from rebel prisons, and also the report of a committee of Congress, as well as the official documents of the War Department and reports and papers found in the captured rebel archives. Many of these throw light on the subject, and from them the story of the regiment might fairly well be gleaned by patient labor. Unfortunately, those having time and strength for such work have not been induced to undertake it, and the task has seemed to fall to the lot of hands that carry also the burden of years. To such hands the work is necessarily a task, a burden from the undertaking of which the compiler shrinks, and from which he dare not hope for more than patchwork and unsatisfactory results. Impelled by a sense of duty, and cheered by the unvarying and uniform kindness and charity of his comrades, thus giving assurance that they will accept at his hands the effort and the will for the deed, the compiler enters very reluctantly and nervously upon this labor that has been long too delayed. He has been glad to avail himself of information from every reliable source, and has endeavored to cull approximate truth from the widely varying or even contradictory testimony. Of this character are many of the official reports and dispatches furnished by officials of our own Army and Navy, as well as by the rebels. Mendacity and veracity, courage and cowardice, vain boasting and genuine modesty, were none of them monopolized by the members of either army, but each class had a share of them. To sift the truth from all that has been said is a serious labor, and may not have been in all cases successfully performed, but the effort to do so has been honestly made by the compiler, and he has had the valuable aid of reliable comrades. In many instances, the statements herein are made fortified by well-known facts that are but incidental to the story of this regiment and are omitted in detail for lack of time and space in this compilation. It is perhaps but justice to the historians as well as actors in the Red River campaign to remark that accuracy in military history has ofttimes made to yield to the necessity for covering the blunders of commanders. It is much easier to deny mistakes and bad conduct than it is to explain them or apologize for them. For that reason, perhaps when even great generals as Grant and Sherman wrote the history of the Battle of Shiloh in their dispatches and memoirs, the facts were not stated as they were known by 10,000 other witnesses. What wonder, then, that General Banks and Admiral Porter, each of whom may not unreasonably been supposed to have heard the political bee buzzing in his military bonnet, should have conspicuously inexact in the statement of facts, and so correct and emphatic in various charges against each other. In like manner, we are to accept the voluminous and boastful reports of Major General Dick Taylor, who opposed them. Though a son of one of the most modest presidents of the Republic, the hero of Buena Vista, his vain falsehoods as to what he alleged had been accomplished were equaled only by the unfulfilled promises of what he would do when the opportunity presented. It is in part from such material that the history of the Red River campaign is to be sifted, a campaign for which no one was willing to avow the responsibility, a campaign that violated every rule of military strategy in its inception and conduct, a campaign with no purpose that corresponded to its expenditure of life and property, and which in its general conduct and results was as disgraceful as it was disastrous to those who apparently expected to reap from it both fame and fortune. The regiment is a military unit, as the family is the social unit. The experience of each member of the family may widely different from that from every other member, yet the aims, efforts, successes, and failures of each have much interest to all the other members, and often seriously affect their lives and fortunes. In like manner, each member of a regiment may have his military fortune made or wrecked by the conduct of his regimental comrades. Therefore, the history of the regiment, like the history of the family, is of much interest to each of its members, and so, also, is the history of each member of interest to those who are members of the same family or regiment. Although the 32nd Regiment of Iowa Volunteers for a time was broken into detachments and widely separated, its members never forgot their fealty to their regimental organization. For more than a year, the four companies, A, D, F, and G, under Major Eberhart, were not with the regimental colors. During a portion of that time, the other companies were also separated. At one time, companies B, E, and I, under command of Captain Miller, were in Columbus, Kentucky, while companies H and K, under Captain Benson, occupied the famous number 10 in the Mississippi River, and at the same time, Captain Peebles with Company C, mounted, was doing duty as cavalry scouts with the headquarters at Union City, Tennessee. During a part of this time, Colonel Scott was in command of the post of Columbus, Kentucky, and Lieutenant Colonel Mix was a member of a courts-martial in Cairo. While these conditions existed, varied more or less in detail during the year 1863, the service of each member of the regiment was that of the detachment to which he belonged, unless, as sometimes happened, he was detailed individually for some special service. Examples of such personal duty may be noted in the service of Chaplain Caldwalder as superintendent of the contrabands, Lieutenant Childs as officer of the post, and Adjutant Aldridge as the adjutant of the post, all these at Columbus, Kentucky. These incidents serve to embarrass the writing of the history of this regiment as the military unit, for as a matter of fact, during many months it was but an aggregate of several factions, and in giving the story of the service of the members of the various detachments, there can be, at this late date, but a fragmentary story, and told more as the story of a half-forgotten dream than as real history. During this fragmentary period, there are few records except the morning reports of the companies. After the companies were brought again together, the 6 companies coming back to Vicksburg from Sherman's raid to Meridian, and the 4 companies reaching the same point from their long and arduous campaign in Arkansas in the early months of 1864, the story of the regiment as a regiment is continuous. Introductory. Under the proclamation of the President of the United States, bearing the date July 2, 1862, calling for further enlistments for 3 years or during the war for the suppression of the Great Rebellion, the volunteers who constituted the 32nd Regiment Iowa Infantry were enrolled. The call of the President was for 300,000 men, and of these, Iowa was asked to furnish 5 regiments of infantry. Under date of July 9, 1862, Governor Kirkwood announced this call by proclamation in which he said, "The preservation of the Union, the perpetuity of our government, the honor of our state, demand that this requisition shall be promptly met. The harvest is upon us, and we have feared a lack of force to secure it. But we must put our brave Iowa boys in the field and meet new emergencies with new exertions. Our old men and boys unfit for war, our women, if need be, must gather the harvests, while those able to bear arms go forth to aid their brethren in the field. The necessity is urgent. Our national existence is at stake. The more promptly the needed troops are furnished, the more speedily will this unholy rebellion be crushed. Until then, we must endure the hardships and privations of war. Men must now make, as many have already, made sacrifices in the cause of our country. The enemy by conscription have forced into the field all who can bear arms. We have as yet relied upon voluntary action, but if need be, the same energies must be exerted to preserve our government that traitors are trying to destroy it. I have assigned 1 regiment to each 1, 2, 3, and 4 congressional districts, and 1 regiment to 5 and 6 together." Under this vigorous call, the Adjutant General of Iowa was able on August 25th to designate Camp Franklin, near Dubuque, as the rendezvous of the 32nd Regiment, to be composed of companies in the 6th Congressional District, east of the Des Moines River. Within the bounds of this territory, 11 companies were enrolled. As an inducement to enlistment in the more sparsely settled localities, it has been promised that as far as practicable, the volunteers should be assigned together. Under this proposition, it was thought best to assign one of the two companies from Black Hawk County to the 31st Regiment. By this arrangement, the other 10 companies formed the 32nd Regiment and were placed as follows. Company A, Lewis H. Cutler, Captain, was enrolled in the counties of Hardin, Hamilton, Wright, and Kossuth, was ordered into quarters by the governor in July 1862. Total rank and file, 100 men. Company B, Amos B. Miller, Captain, was enrolled in Cerro Gordo, Worth, Hancock, Hamilton, and Winnebago counties, and was ordered into quarters August 25, 1862. Total rank and file, 85 men. Company C, Herbert F. Peebles, Captain, was enrolled in the county of Black Hawk. Date of being ordered into quarters was not given in Adjutant General's report. Total rank and file, 92 men. Company D, Theodore DeTar, Captain, was enrolled in the county of Boone and was ordered into quarters August 11, 1862. Total rank and file, 99 men. Company E, John R. Jones, Captain, was enrolled in the county of Butler during July and August 1862. Total rank and file, 96 men. Company F, Joseph Edgington, Captain, was enrolled in Hardin County, the enlistments being mostly from August 10 to 15, but reported as ordered into quarters July 3, 1862, as in the case of Company A, whose enlistments were also mostly about August 10 to 16. Total rank and file, 94 men. Company G, Charles A. L. Roswell, Captain, was enrolled in the counties of Butler and Floyd, going into quarters mostly from August 5th to 25th, 1862. Total rank and file, 83 men. Company H, James B. Reeve, Captain, was enrolled in Franklin County, but had members from adjacent parts of Butler and Hardin. Dates of going into quarters ranging mostly from August 14, 1862. Total rank and file, 84 men. Company I, Jonathan Hutchison, Captain, was enrolled in Webster County, but several of the members were from Humboldt County, the dates ranging from August 12th to August 22nd, 1862. Total rank and file, 83 men. Company K, Joseph Caldwalder, Captain, was enrolled in Story and Marshall County, most of the dates ranging from August 10th to August 22nd, 1862. Total rank and file, 96 men. The line officers were chosen by members of the several companies, and these as well as the warrant officers were usually appointed by agreement, more or less equitably, among the men from different counties or neighborhoods. Some of these officers were bestowed because of activity in securing enlistments, and others because of personal qualification, including military experience. In the main, the selections were based upon absolute merit, and when the final mustering took place, October 6th and 7th, 1862, at Camp Franklin by Captain Geo. S. Pierce, USA, there was customary hopefulness and enthusiasm of the Iowa volunteer, entering upon the discharge of patriotic duty. The regiment was organized by the appointment of John Scott of Story County as colonel, Edward H. Mix of Butler County as lieutenant colonel, and Gustavus A. Eberhart of Black Hawk County as major, and the commissioned staff were Charles Aldrich of Hamilton County, adjutant, Thomas C. McCall of Story County, quartermaster, Stephen B. Olney of Fort Dodge, surgeon, Jesse Wasson of LaPorte City, and Winfred B. Waters of Marshalltown, assistant surgeons, and Lorenzo S. Coffin of Webster County, chaplain. Charles H. Huntley of Company B was made sergeant major. Alan T. Burchard of Company I became quartermaster sergeant, and Jason R. Millard of Waterloo, commissary sergeant. For a roster comprising the military history of each of the 1,000 men, more or less, composing the regiment, including recruits, the reader will consult the appendix and personal notes herein. The body of this work will be devoted to the history of the regiment as a military organization. Every member of the regiment has a deep interest in the manner in which this shall be done, and especially in the success which should attend an honest effort to truthfully give, without fear or wrongly told for purposes that will not bear investigation. In the perusal of these pages, the reader, whether an actor on the stage, a spectator of the drama, or a patient study of history, is requested to bear in mind the conflicting details and testimony which so often arise from the different points of view of the witnesses. Such differences do not indicate a disregard for truth, but only show the fallibility of memory, or how the sight may be warped by the interest or prejudice. Time and patient investigation will finally reach the bottom of the mind, and truth will stand revealed. This book, it is hoped, will serve a purpose that will excuse, perhaps justify, its publication. Note: in the organization of a regiment there is an officer of much importance who bears neither commission nor warrant, yet who does much towards the comfort of the men and efficiency in the service, or by a selfish course gives results in other and less beneficial directions. This officer is the sutler. Thomas B. Knapp of Iowa Falls filled this position. He had been tendered and accepted to the position of major. Owing to the supposed claims of locality, the governor felt himself not able to carry out the program that had been arranged. This course greatly embarrassed Mr. Knapp. He determined to accompany the regiment as an enlisted man if no more important duty could be assigned him, and was finally prevailed upon to act as regimental sutler. It is due to him to say that he deserved and received the confidence and respect of every member of the regiment.